Everybody ready?
Yes.
All right. Ready, Dana?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the June 4th, 2025 Bruce Township Planning Commission meeting. Our start time is 6 p.m. Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Vincent, Jay Vincent,
Here.
Rick Hagelstein,
Here.
Blaylock,
Here.
Cant,
Here.
Boyce. Here. Barnett,
Here.
Dave Vincent.
Here.
David.
All right, we have a quorum. So before we start our meeting, I'd ask you to rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this is a public business meeting of the Planning Commission, but we do welcome public comments at certain points throughout our agenda. We do request that you sign in to the table to my right, if you haven't already done so we know who is with us this evening. The Planning Commission is made up of 7 Bruce Township residents appointed by the board. In addition, we have Township employee Dana Buchanan, who is the Township's planning coordinator. We also have Joe Tangari, professional planner with Giffords Webster, who advises us in the work that we do. There will be an opportunity for public comment this evening. We generally ask that you keep those comments to 3 minutes. When you move to the podium, we ask that you state your name and address, so we have that for the record. And please address any comments to the commissioners and not anybody in the audience. And with that, we thank you for your participation in this meeting this evening. All right, Commissioners, so as we look at the agenda for this evening, we have the approval of the minutes from the April 2nd meeting. Are there any edits or corrections?
I have an edit, I believe. Towards the latter part of the meeting, what I believe was comments from commissioners, I reached out to the board seeking whether there was support from my fellow members to ask Joe to revise or come with some input regarding revisions to the lighting ordinance.
Okay.
So, in my recollection is we were all in agreement. So, Joe, you had an opportunity to do anything on that?
I mean, I have engaged in some research on it. I haven't put together suggested language yet, but if you do want me to have a preliminary discussion on that, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Well,
So I guess, Rick, do you have a particular change to the minutes? Or
Yeah.
would you like to discuss this later in the
well,
meeting?
yeah, we'll discuss it later, but,
Okay.
basically, in so many words, it was unanimous direction from the Planning Commission, asking Joe to look into enhancements to our lighting ordinance.
Okay,
So that's not how I recall it, because it wouldn't have been unanimous, at least on my part. I recall the comments.
Well, okay.
So I don't recall that we voted on it or, said,
It wasn't a motion.
answered in the affirmative or even like a consent agenda. So I think it's worded properly. I think that was something you brought up, and I know Joe agreed to, Joe answered in the affirmative to review it or look into it.
Okay, I'm looking to get something going sooner rather than later. So, anyway, enough about that for now.
okay.
So are you saying no edits to the minutes?
Well, I mean, David, he had an objection to it. I mean,
I didn't have an objection. I don't recall having to answer in the affirmative.
okay.
So I recall you making the comments. So I just wanted to be clear. I don't think, unless you remember that we voted on it, I would think it would be
It
here.
wasn't a vote.
Okay,
It was basically just seeking, informal,
yeah,
whether
informal.
there was support. My recollection there was, so.
Okay, well, I think in light of that, we can talk about it either in, probably in 12 or 13.
Sure, I mean, the minutes can say as is, because we've already
Yeah.
discussed it in, more detail than what's typical for review of the minutes, so let's just discuss it later on.
Okay.
Okay?
Anything else, commissioners, on minutes from the April meeting? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Cant. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hagelstein. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Next up is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda for this evening? I don't know that we will call it out. We will just, I think when we get to 12, we will touch on the lighting
Sure.
comment
Thank
that
you.
Rick brought up. Hearing no objections, is there motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve?
Motion by Commissioner D. Vincent,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Can. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, agenda is approved, which takes us to item 6, which is our public comment. So at this time, if anyone's here who would like to address the commission, please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and share your comments.
Hi, everyone. I'm George Van Hoody. I live in Armada Township. I have a business in Bruce Township, Northern Farm Market. I don't know if you guys know where it is. And I was talking to our supervisor about what would be a way to put something on your master plan for like rezoning. You know, I'm not asking for rezoning, but I have a 82-acre farm on Van Dyke that's next to industrial, and I feel that that should be on our master plan for industrial. Van Dyke is a real busy road. Last year, we had a school bus that just about got nailed in the back end of it, picking up kids. And just like my piece of land, we can get probably 7 splits off of Van Dyke with driveways, with houses. And I'm looking at it, doesn't make much sense, you know, where a possibility of school buses stopping at each house on a 40, 50,000 cars a day road. You know, and just a couple of days ago, we had a real bad accident right here on 32 and Van Dyke, you know. I mean, it was terrible. But this school bus could have been the same thing. You know what I mean? But the truck sideswiped it, you know, picking up someone or dropping them off, I think it was. But it's something where I figured this is the place to start, you know. So when you guys do when are you doing your next master plan for the township?
So we are in the process right now of reviewing certain aspects of the master plan, so that is going on throughout this year.
Oh, it's going on right now?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, you know, like I say, I mean, it's a piece that's right next to industrial. And then on the north side, we have the big, there's a ravine where you got Elkhorn that butts up next to it. But there's so much woods to the north, it probably wouldn't affect anybody, you know, whatever it was zoned. So, well, that's why I came up here to talk about.
All right. Thank you.
Paul Okoniewski, 71970 Lassiter Road, Bruce Township. To preserve and protect the existing natural assets found within the township, these include extensive natural topography as well as extensive woodlots, wetlands, open spaces, and farmland. to promote developments which are sensitive to the existing environmental character of the township, provide for innovative design, and provide a variety of quality living conditions. To understand that Bruce Township will largely be a bedroom community where residents will primarily work, shop, and entertain outside of the township in more densely developed communities. To continue a well-planned growth and development policy. If you're wondering what I'm reading from, it's the Bruce Township Master Plan Goals and Objectives Implementation Study. I hope every one of you have a copy of that. The whole idea is that since 1998, and I have the documented proof, this community and its leadership has gone to great lengths to maintain the rural atmosphere of the community. The master plan was reaffirmed in 2022, so it should not even be up for review until at least 2027 and at the latest 2032. So you have to wonder, why is there such pressure to change the master plan? What are the special interests behind it? And George, I understand your situation. The whole idea is when we created this master plan was that when developers or property owners along Van Dyke in particular wanted to rezone and put something in there, you, the planning commission, would have a say-so on what it is, does it fit in our community, similar to what happened on the northern end there with that storage facility that kind of fell through. If you rezone the master plan, that takes away any authority you have to look at it and see if it's a proper fit for our community. So the whole idea is for this strong master plan is to give you, the planning commission, the authority to either thumbs up or thumbs down on developments in our community, and maintain the rural atmosphere as much as possible. And that's been the rule since 1998. I also noticed you have 5G ongoing discussion. I know, Jared, you're not much interested in what I have to say, but the 5G was tabled in a moratorium when I was on the board because there was quite a few people that had health concerns with 5G implementation. So keep that in mind as you have these discussions with 5G towers and that on the placement. There's a lot of people very sensitive to that, and there was a lot of concern from the community when that first came up. So I just want to bring that to your attention. But the whole idea since 1998 is to maintain a rural atmosphere of this community. And if you go wholesale rezoning and updating the master plan to support some special interest behind it, you're abdicating your authority and you're going against what the people in the community want, because this study included the people in the community.
Thank you. All right, seeing nobody else, we'll move on to item 7, public hearings. There are none this evening, which will take us to item 8, which is our reviews. First up is the Lombardo site plan review, Van Dyke and Mellon.
So, well, we've talked about this site quite a bit recently because of the rezoning request. So I think you're all familiar with the area we're talking about. So it is between Van Dyke and Mellon. The two roads don't actually intersect. It always sounds like we're talking about the corner of Van Dyke and Mellon when we say Van Dyke and Mellon. But it's actually between them, north of Kading and south of the primary commercial area of the township. So there was a rezoning here to actually eliminate some commercial zoning. There was some C1 and a little bit of C2 that was taken away. It was all made R1B, which is the prevailing residential zoning in that area. And the applicant has now come forward with a proposed 26-lot residential site condo on 17.5 acres of land. The remainder of that area that we talked about with the rezoning is still commercial. So there are also two residential outlots fronting directly on Van Dyke. They're labeled lots A and B on the site plan. Those bring the total number of home sites that we're looking at here to 28. The lots range in size from 20,003 square feet to 27,711 square feet. All of the lots front on a new proposed private road. Name has not been provided for that road yet. The site is currently almost entirely vacant. There is one building on a portion of it, but that's actually on the commercial portion. So the residentially zoned portion is there's no development on it. Right now, we're looking at the preliminary condominium plan. So the way this works, per our ordinance, is that we review a preliminary condominium plan, and we're basically checking the layout and kind of the more general aspects of the condominium site plan. They will then go through engineering review. They'll get everything nailed down as far as turning radii and all the other things that they've got to often make adjustments on after a site plan is approved and it goes through engineering review, and then it comes back to us for a recommendation on final plan approval, after which the board will actually grant the final plan approval. So we are at the beginning of this process here. Just on the informational end of things, I did notice that the site plan information table still listed the old zoning designations of the land, so that should be updated. There's a lot of legal description going on here because of all the different changes that have been made. One of the things that I know the engineering review is going to be looking for is for all the splits and combinations to be made before approval is granted there. So I just wanted to note that I believe you do have a letter that was distributed today to that effect, but I just wanted to note that we'll be looking at cleaning up all those property lines and getting the property lines to match the zoning boundaries prior to engineering approval. Just looking at this area around it, as we talked about during the rezoning, we do have mostly single-family zoning around it, R1B primarily, some R1A to the west, and then RM1 actually across Mellon to the east. It's all single-family homes on that land, but it is zoned RM1. And then there is, of course, that C2 zoning, which was part of the rezoning, and then additional C2 to the north of that, which is where the actual existing current commercial development is. The R1B district requires a minimum lot size. There's actually a typo in the intro paragraph there. If you look at the table, you've got the right numbers. 20,000 square feet, and as I noted, the smallest lot here is 20,003 square feet. It has a minimum lot width of 100 feet. I did not see lot widths provided on the plan, so I did measure some, and it seems like we're on the right territory, but we should have a lot width measured at the front setback line on every lot on these plans. So that's another informational item. They do have a detention pond that really takes up the entire Mellon frontage. Access to this is only from Van Dyke, and it's kind of a lasso-shaped road. You have a road coming in with a loop. Site condos have some design and improvement standards that they have to comply with. These are found not just in the zoning ordinance, but also Ordinance 135, which is our subdivision regulations, particularly Articles 7 and 8, and the Bruce Township Land Division or Land Development Ordinance, which is 186, and Engineering Ordinance, which is 187. Detailed engineering review is done by an engineer, as it should be, but nevertheless, those all do apply. Pedestrian ways are required. They do have the continuous sidewalk through the development that connects to the existing pathway shown along Van Dyke, so they are meeting that standard. Right of way, the widths of right of way and cul-de-sacs do have to comply with Macomb County Department of Road standards. So there's a 60-foot road right-of-way required. We have a 30-foot road right-of-way labeled here, so that's something we got to talk about. Per section 447 of the zoning ordinance, in locations where the planning commission determines that public roads are not necessary, private roads may be permitted. This is a little bit of a clash with another standard that we have in the ordinance, which says that in the water sewer area, it has to be a public road. We've talked about this recently, that the county isn't taking additional public local roads at this time. So I think in this case, we probably should be looking at that section 447 standard of permitting a private road rather than a public road. That's 447D2 if you'd like to check out the language. We do have some private road standards, of course. It's 517 of the zoning ordinance. Private roads must be designed and constructed in accordance with the township's land development and engineering ordinances. The engineering ordinance, a lot of what the engineering ordinance has to say is actually about the construction, what the sub-base and the actual material of the road, et cetera. Placement of a private road shall allow for the development of building sites with a minimum depth of 200 feet, exclusive of 60-foot road easement on both sides of the road. That standard's not met for all the lots. It wouldn't apply to a public road. So we're kind of in a weird spot with our ordinance, given the county policy. Normally, under the old kind of way of doing things where they would accept a new public road, this would be a public road and the lot widths, the lot depths would be acceptable. In this case, we've got some lots that don't meet the 200 feet and we're having to do a private road. So that's something we have to figure out. I think ultimately we might want to look at the actual standard and whether or not the difference between having a private road and a public road is significant enough that we need to require a greater lot depth when we have a private road versus when we have a public road. It doesn't really look very different when you have a private road or a public road if you're meeting all the standards. So just some food for thought there. As far as what to do now, it does seem to me that we have this standard in our ordinance. It is going to be a private road. There probably does need to be a variance there. And the way that would probably be handled is that they would get some sort of, I don't want to call it a blanket variance, but that's sort of what it is. It would allow them to be less than 200 feet on every lot. And then you kind of have to figure out what the minimum necessary variance is for that. But that, to me, seems like the way we deal with that standard at this point, because we do not have a waiver. We don't have a standard in the ordinance like 447D2 where we're actually saying we can waive the public road requirement. This is a standard that we just, it's in the ordinance and we do not have a waiver provision for it.
So would that be a trip to the zoning board?
Yeah, it
of
would
appeals?
be the zoning board of appeals, yeah. Looking at the other standards for private roads, it does note that enclosed storm drains may be required. Open ditches can be permitted where deemed practical and adequate by the township engineers. They're showing enclosed storm drains, so they're meeting this standard. Private road development shall be subject to the requirements of the Bruce Township Land Development Improvements, Engineering Design, and Construction Standards Ordinance. That's going to be fully assessed in engineering review. If there are any issues there, they'll be worked out during that process. And when it comes back to us for final approval, we ought to be able to be confident that it meets those standards. All lots shall have front-to-front relationships across all local streets. Lots and roads shall be arranged to maximize privacy and avoid creating nuisances for adjoining property. That standard is met. You do have the front-to-front relationship in most cases. Sometimes you've got the island in the middle of the lasso that's got corner lots, so you are going to have some front-to-sides there. They've got the street trees that are required on their plan. Looking at tree removal, we've got a lot of trees coming out of the site, a pretty large replacement number. They're showing 226 replacements. That's in line with the calculations on their plan, but the way the ordinance reads is a little different than the way they've done the calculations. We don't have an exemption for removal of prohibited species, so those have to be added back in. I spent time with this. I looked at the table on there, and I looked at all the trees that were noted as being outside of the area of this that are on the commercial portion, and that is accurate. They've correctly identified which trees are not part of the site condo that's being proposed. So that subtraction is fine, because they're not touching the commercial portion at this point. But that removal of the prohibited species, that's not per our ordinance. So we wind up with a much higher number of replacements. Whether that's practically possible on the site, I'm not entirely sure. That's going to be something that they're going to have to look at. They do have 226 replacements shown. They're primarily in that belt that separates this from the commercial development. I think I did the math, and it was something like you'd need to be putting 10 or so trees on every lot to get to the number that's required. So it's a lot. So I think the applicant needs to think about how they want to approach that, and we can discuss that when he is up at the podium. They have shown us their preliminary utility plan. Water is going to be from wells, but they're doing all the storm and sanitary via sewer. You look at the rear of the lots, that's where you see a lot of the storm being gathered and then channeled to the main system. I did also want to note that if the applicant's intent is for Outlot B to have a driveway onto the private road, there should be some provision for the lot to contribute to the road's maintenance. I know that Lombardo has done that in another development in this township, Insignia Point or Heights, whichever is the bigger one of the two. And they handled it there with several outlots where they had to have engineered septic, and they couldn't include them in the site condo. So I know they've got some experience doing that. I just wanted to note that it's going to have to be done if that is going to outlet onto that private road. And as far as the informational items required for preliminary site condo approval, the one item that we didn't see that's listed here as required was those width dimensions for the lots. That is definitely something we need to see. So if you have any questions or items to discuss with me, now is the time. And if not, then we can allow the applicant to come up and discuss with the Planning Commission.
Joe, did you want to cover anything from Joe Paquette?
Is there anything you wanted me to?
Well, I'll just address that now real quick. So I think that several of the Planning Commission members, including myself, have not had a chance to review any of the engineering information. Some of this came in late this afternoon, and so I think I suspect we will postpone the ultimate decision on this just due to the nature of not having time to review it. Certainly, if anyone has more questions for Joe, we can get some clarification on that. And next time we do come back to this, we won't rehash it all. But I know I have not had a chance to look at it. I know several other members have not either.
I would appreciate the opportunity to look over the engineering. I mean, I see it when I saw it when I got here. And there's 17 items. Not all of them are, big issue items. I would appreciate it. I just don't like preparing questions without being able to digest the information.
Yep.
And normally we get our packets from Dana the prior Thursday, and this letter's dated today, and, process-wise, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, that's not Cosmo's fault.
No, it's not.
Not at all.
No, not at all. But, Joe, it needs to be fed back to Giffords, and this is not the first time we've seen this.
No. This one is my fault.
Is it?
This one's my fault.
Okay. All right. Stand corrected then.
I do have just a couple of questions, and it's just,
Sure.
I don't understand. This is zoned R1B, which is single-family residential, but we're calling it a condo. Is there a reason?
Yeah, condo is a form of ownership, so whereas I guess we'll call it a traditional method of dividing up land for home construction was a plat, where you'd have to go through a couple-year process to divide up the land. The site condominium, or the Condo Act, 1979, I want to say, provided an alternative means of creating a subdivision. And there's still single-family lots, just like they would have been in a plat. But with a condo, you have a master deed and an association. And that was not the case with most plats. I live in a platted subdivision, and I do not have an association. So the condo process is so much easier to do, especially with regard to your interaction with the state, that literally no one does a plat anymore. It's always done as condos. Even if you come into a platted area and you want to retool the subdivision for more modern construction, most people will just float a condo over it rather than try to mess with the current plat. So that's really all that means, is that we're looking at a different mode of ownership from a traditional plat.
Okay. So in this tree removal aspect, this is the second time we've come up with this. It was 156 Gates as well, where they have to count trees that we don't want them to have there.
Sure.
If there would, do you know of anyone that has, like, accounted for that in an ordinance? That those trees either don't count or don't count at 50%, because it doesn't seem right to count them.
I'm sure someone has addressed it in an ordinance before. I don't know of one offhand. I'm only familiar with a few tree ordinances. But it is something that we probably should be looking at, because when I looked at the number that we had here, it was like, well, okay then. So, yeah, it is something that we could definitely look at. Or looking at our multiplier. We multiply the excess over 50% by 2. There might be a better multiplier or some other way that we could handle it. The thing is, if you have 100 trees and you take out 52, your replacement's 4. So the multiplier is not that big a deal, but if you take out all 100 of them, then you're replacing 100. So it gets, it scales up quickly.
Excuse me.
Can I ask a follow-up question
Yeah,
on that?
I was done.
The tree ordinance that's up here that's the one that's only about 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, it's actually quite a bit older than that. It was cleaned up a little bit a few
Okay.
years ago.
Okay, so it's interesting because now as developments are coming forward, and there happen to be in areas that are highly treed,
Sure.
at least the one right next to where I live, they're very aged trees.
Right.
It's been untouched for a long, long time, so it's interesting.
I will say any tree that's dead, I would definitely say can be subtracted. If you're out there with your arborist health scoring the trees and you find one that's dead, I don't think, our ordinance allows you to remove dead trees without any consequences, so that can be subtracted, in my opinion.
Is there some type of a workaround with the tree thing to make it more reasonable?
Yeah, we don't have a waiver built into the ordinance, so it's another thing where if there's some sort of practical difficulty to meeting the standard, a variance would be the pathway.
Well, actually, Randy, you were not at that April meeting, you were out.
I watched it.
Okay, so we had something similar come up with 156. And I don't think we talked about making them, at least at the meeting, to go in for a variance request. But I think we commissioned you to try to work out something. Maybe that is where it'll wind up.
Yeah, it may ultimately go to the zoning board of appeals if they can't figure out a way to meet the standard. I haven't seen anything subsequent to that as far as how they're trying to handle it.
Okay.
But yes, it may ultimately wind up being a subject of a variance request.
And it might have been the 156 Gates conversation where the talk was remove the trees that aren't on the list from the count. Because if they're taking live elms out, they shouldn't have to replace that tree because it's not on the list of trees that they could plant.
I don't recall that. My only recollection was talking about the impact of the dead trees.
Yeah.
Dead or near dead.
Dead or near dead.
Yeah, I mean, if it's got that one
He
little
did, he
branch
did
that's still
mention
green.
that there are a bunch of box elder trees in that area. Box elders is not a replaceable tree.
Yeah.
So you're being required to replace a tree that you wouldn't qualify anyways. So I think that was a problem getting, so either the dead trees or replacement trees, once you extract that number, it may work. But
Yeah.
You're taking trees out that are undesirable to begin with, whether they're dead or they're not even on an approved list.
I think it's something that we could look at modifying, and it might just be that as those two plans work their way through the process, we could modify it before they're done, and then the numbers change.
Yeah. Joe, I have a procedure question. If we were to postpone further discussion, not to cut it off right now, but to making a decision, would Cosmo then have an opportunity during the period of delay to go over your memo, having heard some of what we've talked about tonight, as well as the engineer's memo, which I don't even know if you have got it yet?
I've gotten it, never read it.
Okay, so that's what I figured, but to, look at anything further that when he comes back, he wants to talk about in relation to some of these things that, we're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were to postpone this evening, they could work on some of those issues that are highlighted in my letter between now and their next appearance.
I was going to make a comment just on the tree ordinance. I agree with the comments around not wanting to replace trees that are non-desirable, but I think the nature of that ordinance is to maintain the type of landscape, the fact that there are trees and not just get rid of everything. So I guess I would caution to just say we should allow it to not count any of the trees. I think that part of that is like if there's just the nature of the landscape today that is populated with trees, I don't think we just want to get rid of it solely and say it's not required because the tree that's there is not what we would plant today.
I agree. I think we have to be careful because what applies to one property isn't going to apply to another. So maybe something on a case-by-case basis or some kind
Yeah.
of waiver language that gives us a little bit more wiggle room, but I don't want to,
there's-
I don't think we
there's-
should change it too much.
There's a way you could do that too with a percentage based. If you had let's say the oak, the maple, the pine, the premium trees, you could replace those one for one. You get a box elder or more undesirable tree, you could do that at 50% to one. There are
Sure.
calculations
Yeah.
that will still maintain wooded lots,
Yeah.
but don't have the density of just a bunch of garbage trees.
Right.
So that could be addressed also.
Yeah, I think they're valid scenarios in front of us, and we should,
Yeah,
think about how
absolutely. We
to.
want to keep the premium woods. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody's going to disagree with that.
Yeah.
But when we see these numbers here, those are huge numbers. You're talking forest size lots.
Yeah.
Almost to a point where it's almost unattainable and then extremely costly.
But that's also because they're basically clear cutting the whole lot and the ordinance isn't written to accommodate that.
Right.
So I don't think we should make that our standard either.
No, I'm just saying some of the other trees are not gonna replace it. So I'm just trying to maintain as many trees as possible without going one for one with trees that you wouldn't keep anyhow. Like I said, like the dead trees.
Right.
We've already
That
mentioned
makes
that.
sense.
Trees, you know, they're counting dead trees as one. That's not really it. It's just a dead tree. It's decayed, it's just happy standing upright. So those aren't really functional trees anyways. But, so yeah, I'm sure there's a way we can
Yep.
come up with it.
Maybe a minimum threshold that X number of trees are required for so many square feet of lot size. That's the minimum threshold, you know, that it can't fall below.
Sure.
So,
Okay. I know this isn't your fault that we're postponing it. Is this going to jam you up bad, or are we
No,
able to
no.
work around? Because
If I could
Sure.
just talk to a few things on his review.
Okay.
So in general, right, he had things, lot widths need to be labeled, that needs to be done, right? The cleanup stuff. The table's incorrect, the lot widths need to be labeled. Some of the engineering comments were a lot of clarification there, legal description, stuff like that. There's a couple things on the road right-of-way issue, the 30-foot road right-of-way, that was actually part of the conditional rezoning, that the property shall be able to use a 30-foot wide road right-of-way. And also a concept plan similar to this site plan was also in the conditional rezoning that showed lots that weren't 200 feet deep. Right, so I think we're okay there. And we'll look at the engineering comments. To Joe's comment about the trees, it is going to be tough to fit those trees. When I got the review comment, I started looking at it and see, well, how am I going to fit these trees? You know, I have one idea of potentially taking, like right now, traditionally, you have the storm sewer all the way at the back of the home site, right? And there's a 12-foot easement there. I could probably pull that easement 10 foot off the rear property line and plant those rear property lines with trees. You know, at least on the outside border. It provides some screening for everybody surrounding. It'll get me more trees, but that's going to be maybe 100 more trees or maybe 150 more trees, and I need to get over 300 more trees. So to your comment, Commissioner Boyce, if we do postpone it, I would like the opportunity to meet with Joe, potentially some planning commission members. I have some ideas on how to get close to that number. I don't know how to get all the way there. I work in Oakland Township has a pretty stringent tree ordinance, and there's a developer there, Gene D'Agostini, who just develops the lots, but he doesn't build the houses, and I've built a few houses in his neighborhoods, and he actually makes the builders plant the trees, because he's just a developer, right? So he actually has the builders plant the trees, we put up a cash bond with the township, build the houses, and we're required to plant like 5 trees on every lot when we're done, and we get that cash bond back at the end. So, you know, that could probably get me another 150. I'm still short probably, you know. So I want to do everything I can to comply. I think there's some creative ways we can have homeowners when they do their landscaping, they're going to plant trees anyway, have them have a requirement. I could put it in the master deed that they have to plant a minimum of, call it 5 trees. I could line some of the rear yards, but I still think that's only going to get me up, you know, maybe 250, and I need to be like 350 more than I have right now. So there's enough here, probably, I don't mind postponing, there's enough clarification items and things like that here. But in the meantime, I would like that opportunity to meet with Joe and some planning commission members. I didn't have time yet to consult with Urban Land and Jim Epping, who did my plans yet, but I'll do that. I'll see what the numbers we can get to. I think there's still going to be a discrepancy there, you know, because you don't want to tell someone they got to plant 10 trees on their lot, because it's not practical, right? I've already planted trees along the back. They might want a pool. They might want a play set. They don't want their whole backyard to be trees. So I think for a half-acre lot, you can probably get 5. I think that's pretty reasonable. I can add some more street trees. I think there's a lot I can do. I don't know that I can get to that number of almost 600. So I'd like to kind of be able to revise the plans, do my very best. I'd like to be able to have homeowners plant trees. I can put restrictions in the master deed requiring that, cash bonds at time of building permit, things like that, to guarantee that happens in real life. And I think I can get really close. I don't know that I can get all the way there, and we might have to talk about what might be left.
Okay.
And just I'm familiar with a lot of tree ordinances because we work in a lot of communities, and tree ordinances do often have certain types of trees that don't count against you. And the alternative, those tree ordinances typically have other types of trees that count against you more if they're a certain size. Like if they're over 18 inches and they're of a certain size, like if it's 1-to-1, if it's a 24-inch oak, it's like 3-to-1 or something. That's how I see them a lot. There's a landmark tree, which is usually like 18 to 24 inches, really big trees. And they count against you more. There's just regular trees, 6 inches or 8 inches above. And then there's, for lack of a better term, junk trees or that don't count against you. That's what I've seen in tree ordinances a lot.
Landmark trees, often what you do is you take the diameter or breast height of all your landmark trees, and then you have a percentage of that you have to replace with 3-inch caliper trees. So you wind up with, 1,000 inches of diameter or breast height. And then you take 25% of that, 250, and then you divide that by 3 for 3 inches, and that's how many trees you have to replace the landmark trees with. It might only be, 20 trees, but then you wind up with a ton of replacement trees.
Yeah,
We actually did look at that when we were
The
cleaning
landmark
this
trees can get,
thing.
the landmark tree situation, if you have a lot of big trees, can put us often, actually very often, puts us in the same situation we're talking about here, where there's so many trees to plant, we can't fit them, So that's just my 2 cents and what I've seen in tree ordinances in regards to that.
Okay.
Jared, do we need to, Cosmo suggested one PC member and Joe that he could talk to? Do we need to come up with something there?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly open to that. I guess the question I have to Joe is, even if we meet with Cosmo and we come up with what we think could be a workable plan, do we have the vehicle to approve that? Or are we still, like, the ordinance is stating something that
Yeah,
is
we
not-
would need to work on the ordinance too and figure out what works for us as a group, as far as any modification that we might want to make to that might provide for some more flexibility or just fewer overall requirements.
Right. So I guess, to me, that almost seems separate from, because we have this request in front of us.
Yeah.
Right,
Sure.
we're not going to, I don't think it's appropriate to adjust the ordinance, like, in the middle of the process, personally. But I agree, probably, this is highlighting some things about the ordinances currently written that we should probably look at.
Sure.
If we meet with Cosmo and come up with a recommendation, ultimately based on how the ordinance is structured, that would have to go to the ZBA.
Yeah, he could bundle it with his other request for the lot depth and,
And could we do that in a way that when it goes to the ZBA, it has some kind of planning commission stamp of approval on it, or has been,
yeah, I
Validated
think
by-
we can do that. We can also note that the planning commission has agreed to at some point study the issue.
okay. Okay, and I'm on the ZBA, so obviously I can help educate those other members as to what's happening. I think the only comment I have, because it was brought up to me by a resident on Mellon Street, that there's existing drainage issues, and I don't know how that falls into, like, I know this item 8 on here talks about storm water drainage, and if we already have a problem, is this going to make the problem worse? Like, how does that get reviewed through the engineering process?
So, yeah, the engineers do have a standard for what happens with stormwater. And to oversimplify the standard, it's basically that your stormwater is not supposed to be going on to neighboring sites. So what they're going to do is they're going to look at the grading and topography to ensure that it's going to go toward the storm sewer that's being developed here. And then ultimately that detention pond is correctly designed. I actually hear this a lot. Well, if something is done on this site, then it might make drainage problems worse. But actually, usually new development makes drainage problems better in an area. In urban places, when you have redevelopment of an old site that was developed back in the 30s or 40s or something, there was never any underground detention on those sites. The new development typically has it, so you'd have less runoff on those, from those sites. And then in a more rural context, you kind of have the same thing. The water's just going wherever right now because the site's never been graded. If this plan is approved, you ultimately have to grade the site so that the water is draining into its storm system rather than off of the site. So it should make the drainage situation in the area better.
Okay. And that is validated, I mean, is this saying it's already been validated, or is that validated at some point?
That's validated during engineering
During-
review.
okay.
Yeah, they will look at it in a great deal of detail during
Okay.
engineering review.
Okay. Okay, so in light of, I think on the tree ordinance side, is there somebody that's interested in working with Cosmo and Joe on coming up with a potential recommendation for how we might address this?
I would.
Randy? Okay. Anybody else, or, I think
I have time as well.
Daryl?
Oh, yeah, I have no problem with
Daryl and Randy, you guys signing up for that? Dave, do you want to be part of that, or, two's probably
Probably
good?
just two is
Yeah,
good,
two's
but
good.
those guys. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll work with you on coming up with a plan. I do think it's going to go before the ZBA, but
Yeah.
we'll just, like I said, combine that with the other item that we mentioned, and then we'll go from there.
Just a quick note, I'm out of the country from the 16th to the 30th, so we should schedule it next week.
Okay.
Yeah, and my wife is due second week of July, so,
Oh.
you know, I might not be around beginning of July either.
Our meeting is July 9th.
Well, somebody else is probably going to be here. Yeah. Somebody else will probably be here in my place then. Yeah,
Preemptive congratulations then.
thank you.
Do
Thank
you
you.
have a motion to postpone?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to postpone the site plan review for the Lombardo development at Van Dyke and Mellon to the July 9th Planning Commission meeting, to give commissioners time to review additional information that was provided today.
I'll second that.
Motion by Jay Vincent, seconded by Cant. Roll call or just verbal?
You can do that by acclamation.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, motion carries. Thanks, Cosmo. That takes us to item 8B, which is the Space Park Site Plan Review at 71701 Bruce Tech Park Drive.
Yes, so you may know this is kind of a field with a road in it right now. This will be the first development proposed in this area. It was not actually done by a condo, it was done by splits, lot splits. And one of the things that's being proposed here is that they're going to take a little piece of the lot to the south and combine it with this one. They're going to take it from that lot to the south and combine it with this one to make this site a little bigger. So they're proposing a 76,800 square foot industrial building with 2 tenant spaces. They're showing 9,000 to 14,000 square feet of office space spread across the 2 units on the ground floor and mezzanine. It depends a little bit on how much is built and how the mezzanines are used. If the mezzanines are used as storage, then obviously that's not going to be office space. Rest of the area is labeled as shop space. Proposed development occurs within that subdivision. And it's going to be served by 2 driveways onto Bruce Tech Park Drive. It's site 6.24 acres. It's vacant and zoned LI1. Everything around it zoned LI1. It's all vacant. Looking at the dimensional standards of the LI1 district, We found that they were all met except for the height. They applied for a height variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. I believe that meeting was this Monday. Am I correct about that, Dana?
It was passed Monday. It was postponed again until next Monday.
Oh, I see, okay. So that is still a pending request before the Zoning Board of Appeals. But they are seeking 45 feet 2 inches rather than the 40 feet height that we permit in the district. That is to accommodate one of those ceiling cranes that are pretty common in modern industrial facilities. Looking at the appearance of the building for principal non-residential buildings within 200 feet of the front lot line, the front walls of the building have to be constructed of stone, face brick, or other decorative material approved by the Planning Commission. The front of the proposed building is primarily brick with some windows. There's a wall panel system and flat metal awnings near the entrances, and that wraps 30 feet along both side walls. From there, there's masonry wainscoting and a band that runs along the full perimeter of the building's base. Above the mezzanine level on the front facade, the metal material that comprises most of the building's exterior walls is present along the full width of the building. The Planning Commission has to look at that design and determine whether or not it feels it's appropriate if they're meeting the intent of this standard. So that's one thing that you're going to be addressing in your discussion and ultimately in a motion should you make one to approve. Required off-street parking. Zoning ordinance has parking requirements for office, industrial, and warehouse uses per section 1518B4. Floor area for the purposes of commuting parking is based on 90% of gross floor area. The applicants provided a calculation for 12,000 square feet of office with the rest as industrial. We found that the square footages and divisors used on the plan site information table didn't seem to match the ordinance and floor areas noted on the plans. I did a calculation based on the industrial office and office floor areas, or the industrial office standards that are in the ordinance. It does look like parking's compliant. We just want to verify all these numbers on the back end to make sure that we've got everything right. The PC actually can approve a reduction in the required spaces where the applicant can demonstrate that the number of required spaces isn't necessary. And then that area would have to be set aside in case the parking needs to be constructed. They do have a large area at the rear of the site that would be able to accommodate more parking spaces should they become necessary. But again, I do think they have an appropriate amount of parking on their site plan. Looking at loading requirements, they have a big compliant loading space located along the back of the building in the rear yard, so that standard's met. They have the required 29 parking lot trees. Looking at green belts, berms, and walls, we do have a street tree requirement. It's 1 tree per lot in a subdivision, so this is a very large lot, but it does need that 1 tree that has to be added to the plan. Outdoor storage. So there's a paved area behind the building. It's not really labeled on the plan. There is one reference to it on the lighting plan as a storage area. So I really wanted to discuss this area during this meeting, what its intent is, and then we do have some standards for outdoor storage areas in our ordinance. So I think we got to get a handle on what that area is supposed to be for, how it's going to be used, and what we need to be looking at in terms of our standards for outdoor storage. Particularly our screening standards. They have a compliant dumpster enclosure. We did not receive a photometric plan, so we'll need to see that. Had a couple informational items. We have some north arrows pointing west and mislabeled elevations. If you look at the architectural plans, east and west are flipped, and the west elevation detail also seems to be part of the east elevation.
Joe, I think we did get a photometric plan.
Yeah. I think
Did
that
you
was
not
it.
get it, Joe?
Oh, I think it came in after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
Because-
I haven't had a chance to verify it.
Okay.
yeah, our memo, I think your memo remarks on the
Oh, wait,
photometric.
yeah. sorry, thinking of another thing in another city.
That's right.
Yeah, so they do have the compliant, okay, yeah, right. I'm remembering this now. We had a couple of notes on there. So one, high level of average parking illumination, so that's got to come down. That should help the trespass issue where they've got some values in excess of 0.1 foot candles at the property line. And then the uniformity ratio is fine for the parking lot. The rear area that's labeled storage yard on the lighting plan is well above 4:1, so that would need to be adjusted as well. Yeah, sorry about the confusion there. And then the last note is that boundary adjustment. That completion of that property transfer would be required prior to permitting. That should be a condition of site plan approval. Engineering is going to make that a condition of engineering approval as well, that boundary adjustment being made. They are showing it in detail right now, though. So do you have any questions for me? Any comments? Items to discuss?
Joe, I have something on the boundary adjustment, and you may have said something at the beginning, and I missed it. But is the reconfiguring of the parcel to create the new parcel A, does that involve 2 current parcels or 3 current parcels?
So you have 2 current parcels. You have, let's just call them north and south. So you have north parcel, which is where they're planning to build this building. You have south parcel. North parcel is going to absorb a certain amount of south parcel. There'll be a land transferred from one to the other.
Right.
So it's two parcels that are
Okay.
involved.
Because the reason I'm questioning is because on the site plan application, it lists 3 parcels.
Yeah, I saw that.
Do you notice it too?
I can see if I can figure out what the third parcel is, or perhaps the applicant would know.
I wondered if that was going to be combined with if 4 is getting split up, does the rest of 4 go into 3s?
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I don't see that
I don't know that it calls it out
represented on the
anywhere.
plans. I don't think it's called out.
Right, because if we're going to make a motion, I think we need to know what's involved, correct? Which property's involved?
Yeah.
Yeah, even the plans show parcels 2, 3, and 4 on them.
And I'm sorry, what was the question about the parcels?
I think it involves 2 parcels, but there's 3 parcels listed on the application.
So we just listed them, the owner owns all 3. We didn't know, so we need a portion of the middle parcel to complete the building project. And at the time, we didn't know if we were gonna then equally split up parcels 1 and 2. So
Gotcha.
when we did the split combo, which we haven't done yet, waiting for this approval first.
On your site plan or application, which lists the 3, which are the 2 that we're really looking at?
There should only be 1 parcel listed, so if that doesn't tell you, you mind if I just see what you're referencing?
Well, there has to be at least 2 if we're
So the
combining.
common description has 3 parcels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Identify you don't have to have the building lot one, do you?
I do have the site plan.
4,000.
I can't read it.
It should be separate pages.
Yeah, that's pretty tough to read.
What?
Yeah.
I
So,
get the concept, but we need to know what we're approving.
so what you see at the top of sheet 1 of 4 is it has parcel descriptions for parcel 2, parcel 3, and parcel 4. And
What I'm talking about is the property identification.
parcel 2 is untouched. Parcel 3 gives some of its land to parcel 4, and the parcel A, parcel B descriptions will, when that split is completed, supplant the descriptions for parcels 3 and 4.
Okay.
So that's why you've got 5 parcel descriptions at the top. You've got current and new, and then
So-
parcel 2 is simply not part of the land transfer. It's just described because they own it. It's not being touched in this land transfer.
Okay, so it's 2, 3, and 4, but then it's going to become 2A and B.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have parcels 2, 3, and 4. 2 will remain, then we'll have 3A and B, or however you guys want to label them, but
Yeah.
the way that you made it sound, Jared, is 2A and B, that there'll only be 2 parcels
No, I said there's
remaining.
2, and then it says parcel A and parcel.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
yep.
3 total, but it's going from 2, 3, 4 to 2, and then numerical, or alphabet description of A and B, so.
To
it's still
Joe's
3.
point, it was 2, 3, and 4 based on the plat plan.
Yeah.
And then we just tried to identify what the new parcel's gonna look like, A and B.
Okay.
It is confusing, and I apologize. We'll clean it up on the final one.
Yep. All right, Joe, were you complete with your
Yes.
review? Okay. Before we ask questions to the applicant or the applicant's representative, any questions for Joe specific to what he's provided?
From me as well.
Not you yet. So Joe, just to be clear on the parking, it sounds like your assessment is there are enough spots, but that's contingent upon validating the space allocations for the different types of space?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, any more questions for Joe? Okay. It's Christian, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can you tell us about the space behind the building? What the intention of that is going to be used for?
Sure. So a lot of the traffic outside of employee traffic is going to be semi-traffic. And so the large area behind is to make turning radiuses. If you can imagine it, I don't think we had, yeah. So if you go to page A 2.1, we have the rear elevations of the building. So there's 3, we'll say, sections of this building with 3 egresses, access, overhead doors. So we need semis to come in, turn around, and then be able to either pull in or back in. So the large paved area is due to turning radius needs.
Okay.
Obviously, we could potentially put perimeter parking along the paved area, but we'd really like to stay away from putting any in the center because we need that for turn radiuses.
Sure.
And that kind of goes to my next point, which was on the photometric. So there are a couple of locations back there that really have almost 0 foot candles in the center of the parking lot. And the reason is because it's such a large paved area, to broadcast from the curb or from a pole is going to be really hard. So we were looking at your ordinances for exterior lighting, and it seems to be, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, from what I'm gathering, it's 20-foot pole height maximum. So one of 2 things, and I understand the 4-to-1 ratio. It really doesn't work with the turning radiuses to put pole lights in the center of that paved area. It really won't work. It'll meet the needs for your ordinance for exterior lighting. One option that we could do, and I don't know if we can do this administratively, there's nothing behind this really for a ways, and you're not really going to see it. I know that we want to kill the light pollution, but if we had the ability, and it may be something we want to add on to the ZBA request, put 30-foot pole lights, and then if we had the ability for just the lights in the back, we could put double heads on them. So instead of having just one pole light with one head, we'd have like a V with two. And if we could broadcast those up just in the back of the building, we feel like that would get us to the 4-to-1 ratio without having to put pole lights in the center of that paved area.
Well-
We have a couple of different options that Gasser Bush are working on, but it is a large area to span. And if, you know, you put higher lumens, higher wattage, different heads on that pole height, all it really does is worsen our ratio, because then you have a higher foot candle right below it. The further you get away, the ratio just deteriorates. So, you know, we're open to, the only other potential thing that we could do if it was absolutely necessary was just put a 5-foot concrete base. Typically they're like 32, 36 out of the ground, and then surround it with bollards. We're trying to keep it as clear as possible, because those 3 entrances really need that radius. So again, parking, not an issue. We'll do whatever it takes to make it work. I think I just roughly counted about 180 spots. I think per the occupancy and the usage, we needed like 240 or something. We could
If you maxed out,
line,
if you maxed out the office, you would, but
Yeah.
if you don't build out the maximum amount of office, you're right where you need to be.
okay.
So to confirm, that's not a storage area in the back. That's
No.
entirely for truck. Okay, so you can ignore.
I mean,
the
well,
storage.
don't get me wrong, they may have a semi pull along the back curb and just drop the trailer, but it's not gonna be like a consistent, like, you know, painted areas, store this here, store this here. It's just, it'll be like overnight, nothing planned.
Yeah. All right, so you can ignore the storage comments in the letter. That simplifies things a great deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Regarding lighting, one of the problems, and you've probably seen it, is that by tilting fixtures up, and it seems like the trend now is like everybody's using Kelvin 5000, and it's like, it's ridiculous, it's blinding. And so I'm personally very passionate about lighting, trying to keep our community rural, and towards the credit of the developer of the street, the fixtures that he has along the street, those are dark sky compliant fixtures. They're very, very dim. So, but, 30-foot poles and tilting the fixtures, I'm holding to horizontal only. So how many poles do you have? I'm seeing 2 along the.
So I may have misrepresented my statement. I believe a full horizontal fixed fixture is okay if we can get the 30-foot height. The tilt, which is what you're talking about, would be my request if we can't get the 30-foot variance. So the tilt would be to broadcast the light, but as you raise the height, we'll have a better broadcast just inherently.
And if we do either, that circumvents even the current state of our lighting ordinance and becomes the new standard going forward.
I'm not following, I'm sorry.
Well, if we allow it for you,
Oh, okay.
30-foot
So-
poles and then tilted fixtures, especially coming through the planning commission, and then we try to restrict other developers to what the current ordinance is, are going to say, well, it was allowed for Bruce Tech Park, so you got to allow it for us.
So I'll say a couple of things. One, we would definitely adhere to it along the front of the building, right? The only problem area is the back, so we would not ask for a 30-foot height writ large, just in the back, which is like 500 feet from the road. Not that I don't think anybody will notice it, but I think that it would be hard to notice if we had 20-foot poles up front and 30-foot poles in the back. I don't really think anybody would.
How many poles?
Catch on to that.
I'm showing or seeing here 2 poles at the rear lot line, actually 1 midpoint.
I think these are the poles.
The poles, okay, oh, you already got 4. Okay, and then, okay, all right, I understand now. Okay, and then you got 4 wall sconces.
I don't have that one, so just
walking over, sorry.
Okay, so you got, on the rear of the building, you got 4 sconces, and it looks like your sconces, the fixtures that you called out are,
They're wrong, they're only downlights, not uplights.
okay, all right, but I mean, they look like they're dark sky
Yes, they are.
compliant fixtures, which most communities are going with. But, I'm looking at holding to the 20-foot height, the fixtures you've got, and I mean, either the trucks are gonna be there during daylight hours or nighttime hours. The trucks have their own integrated illumination. I mean,
Yeah, so I was mentioning, and Joe can maybe elaborate on this, in this area right here, I'll say, when we have 0.02 foot candles, that's essentially dark.
Yeah, that is kind of what they're running up against with their uniformity ratio, what your uniformity ratio is based on your average to your least amount of light. So their average is high because they got all these fixtures around the edge, but the least in the middle is almost unlit. So they wind up with a very high ratio. I mean, what I'm hearing from you is that if you want anything to be varied, it'd be the uniformity ratio rather than the other standards for the
absolutely.
height of the lights.
Trucks have their own integrated lighting. I mean, it's like we drive in the dark all the time. I mean,
So, yeah, one other thing, and just topic of discussion. On the back side of the building, and I just thought about this now, and I can have our lighting rep run a couple of different scenarios, but where these are wall packs at 20 foot and my building's at 45, I could mount them on the wall, and I don't know if that is so the 20-foot height, that's for independent pole lights, or is that for any?
I'm looking at how it's worded.
So the other thing I was gonna say is, if we could mount these at 30, my building would be at 40, and I could broadcast them back. You would have to literally drive behind my building to notice that they were mounted at 30. I'm just trying to get creative in the ways that.
I realize that in the area is not, it's still very rural out there, but at some point, it's going to be developed up, and you could have more residential development in your backyard. So I got to tell you, I'm against anything above
Understood, yeah,
20 feet. I'm just being forthright with you.
Understood.
I got a question for you. Do you know what Kelvin value you're shooting for? Because soft white is like around 2,800.
It would be between 3 and 4.
4's pretty bright. I'd prefer you stay around 2,800 max.
Pretty yellow.
Does our ordinance
Our
specify
ordinance doesn't specify anything on Kelvin yet, but I think that's
It
one of the
doesn't
things we will.
specify, but I was going to ask for the developer to voluntarily consider a stipulation to do so, because we're working on the ordinance, and that it will be input that I will be providing to Joe specifically, so it's coming.
I can definitely talk to the owners, just in
And he gets it. I mean, he's already
industry and,
lit the street
yeah.
compliant with dark sky. I mean, the street lighting along that boulevard is beautiful. So this would be complementary to what he's already done.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they really want to make this happen, so definitely think about it. I can't promise it myself, I'm not the owner. I'll bring it up to them, but I'm sure that there's some sort of compromise that could be reached.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Christians, I think just the other things for you, the tree that needs to be planted.
That was my question. What is the one tree? I didn't.
That's a street tree, so our subdivision ordinance requires one street tree per lot. So you've got
One street,
yeah.
in the right of way, like the curb to
Yeah,
my
exactly.
sidewalk?
So you've got this huge lot, and you're gonna have to put one street tree on it.
I mean, and that would be a consideration. I think, A, it would look good aesthetically for the property, but also the city. I think there should be multiple trees in
Yeah,
that
maybe
green
Oh,
belt.
yeah, I mean, you could definitely do more if you
Yeah.
wanted. But
So-
there's gotta be one.
We could do that.
And then there's a green belt required along the exterior.
Well,
Oh,
there's no storage.
That's
so no,
only if there's
not
storage. Okay,
required,
so that's squash
Just-
that. Okay.
Can you tell me what that, just repeat that? If there's storage out back, what does
yeah.
that?
If there's a storage yard established on the lot, then there's a fencing and green belt requirement around that.
Just the storage?
Yeah, just the storage.
Okay.
I mean, you're not doing that at this point, so that's not going to apply, but if you ever were to establish a storage lot back there.
One thing we did notice, and things are probably going to have to change with this after we submitted it, the water main right now is located, and I understand the arrows are wrong, but plan view, if you're looking at it, plan view east of the new parcel, and there's a 10-foot easement, and my pole light is in that easement.
Oh, yeah,
So
you're gonna have to move that, yeah.
just a heads up, we're going to relocate the water main to literally demise the new lot line and hopefully clear that. But then what that does is the curb line south of that along the building, now I'm in that right of way. So just something to think about. We're going to have to tackle that. If you have any ideas, Joe.
I'm sure my colleague, also Joe, will probably have some suggestions. He's the one who'll be doing the engineering review.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, well, at least it's on your radar.
Okay. Any other questions for Christian?
Joe, I do have one other question for you. Item number 5, can you just explain the planning commission's approval required for what?
Oh, the building appearance. So we have that masonry or other decorative material approved by the planning commission standard in the ordinance. So they've got mostly masonry on the front, but above the mezzanine, there is that kind of, they wrapped the metal from the rest of the building above the mezzanine.
And
So
the standard is
You
what?
need to approve that, essentially, if they're going to be able to do it. Otherwise, they would have to do masonry all the way up.
Yeah, the front of the building is
I got it,
supposed to be
yep.
masonry.
Yeah, so it's a matter of the planning commission discussing that and saying, okay, we're okay with what's presented, or we'd like to see more masonry.
How many
one or the
feet
other.
is that top band?
So the overall building is 45 at the center, 40 at the eave, and if I had to guess, that would be a 35-foot. I have it right here. Hold on.
That's a question I've got also is
So it is 31 foot of the 42-foot 6 overall.
Which
So-
would be brick, correct?
Yeah,
If you go to plan A 2.1.
Okay.
you can probably see it best on the 3D rendering, where it's
This is 31 feet?
clear
Well,
as
31 feet to here.
For the masonry.
Okay.
It would be like 11-foot 6.
It's another 11 above.
I got a question on the ceiling height. We're over 5 feet above the ordinance on the ceiling. That's for the crane, you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, I guess, Joe, are there any other facilities in our township that have cranes that have that height? Is that is it feasible to have a crane and have, still be in line with
There's at least one, I don't remember which one it is, Dana, maybe you do. There's at least one other that got a height variance for the very
Henshaw.
same
That-
thing.
Oh,
Henshaw has one over in
That's not Bruce.
Oh, I keep
Almeida.
thinking that.
Like the Ford,
Yeah.
the Ford facility on
Yeah.
the Proving Ground got a height. variance
Yes.
For the battery, they had to have a battery test.
Battery drop.
Yeah, at 30 feet, so they needed a few extra. This is before we changed it to 35, is that right?
It's 40 now.
It's 40
yeah.
now.
It used to be 35, which
Yeah.
is not a modern standard for
Okay,
industrial.
so they needed a variance for the height, for that
So we
battery
were
test.
35, we went to 40, now we're looking at 45.
Right.
I guess the problem I have is,
Through an appeal, though, your ordinance is written at 40. I'm asking for yeah.
5 feet by, I was just wondering if it was feasible to have the building, have a cranes and not have the 5 feet? Or is it, there's no way to have that crane without the extra 5?
They're at the ZBA right now asking for that.
Right.
And it's been postponed till next Monday.
Yeah, so Darrell, I'll just share from the ZBA meeting, the discussion was around the size of the parts that they'll be working on and manufacturing and testing. were upwards in 30 feet in diameter. And so I think because of that size of the part, by the time you take the height of the building minus the rails that the crane is actually going to sit on, minus the hook that hangs down below that, you kind of work backwards to get to the size that you could handle a part that big.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any other similar buildings that were in the township that had that same capacity, but without the height, that's all. Gotcha.
Would the whole building be 5 feet taller or just a portion of it where the crane would be?
So we have to list it at its highest point, which is at the ridge. So that would be 45'6". The eaves, which would be the part you mostly are, that's mostly visible to you that you'll notice, would be 42'6". So we have to have a slope on a roof. So
I think maybe what Commissioner Barnett's asking is the entirety of the building going to be 45'6", or just a portion wherever the crane would be functioning?
So there's 3 bays. We're going to have 3 cranes the length of the building. The outside envelope of the building, the eave height would be 42'6", and then because I have to have a pitch on my roof to go the 150 foot to the center at a 1/4 inch per foot brings me to 45. So the center of my building is going to be 45, but if you're walking along the sidewalk along it, it's only going to be 42. So it's a little deceiving. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're outside of the building looking at it, it's 42, except for at the center.
This page kind of shows. This in
Yeah,
it.
you can kind of see
That's
the,
where the picture.
it's a very gradual slope.
Yeah, but you can barely really notice it.
Yes, I see.
Any other?
I do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's very interactive.
Huh?
It's very interactive. It's coming around helping everybody.
Yeah, are we on discussion now?
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to make 2 comments that I think are pertinent to some of the things that we're going to have to address in our motion. The first is the metal facade in front of the building. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I think it looks very nice, and I think it makes a nice wrap from what's on the side. And it also actually blends perfectly in terms of the slight color contrast between that and the brick. The second thing involves the lighting, and I tend to fall in line what I think Rick was commenting about in terms of making adjustments either with regard to the height of the poles or I think the other thing was the tilt. And the reason why is, and although I understand in the back of this particular building, the reason why you're inquiring about it or asking for it, and the back of that building is all abutting LI1, undeveloped at this point. However, if you go further up to the south on Bruce Tech Drive, I think is the name of the street, those front parcels are right next to Orchard Grove, where people live. That's their full-time residence. It's not a little hodunk nursing facility. It's a beautiful residential space. My concern is making allowances for this parcel in terms of lighting is not going to be a good place as further development occurs up front that, for all we know, could be similar situation as what you're talking about, either the height of the building or the need for large semis to maneuver back there. And I'm very concerned about that. On the other side, you've got the courthouse, which, I mean, they're not open at night. You got the ball field, but directly across the street You've also got vacant parcels, and I'm concerned about the light.
Concerned in what respect? That,
We have an ordinance for a reason, and the ordinance is fairly new, as I'm recalling, within the last 3 years, instead of the requirements.
yeah, my asking to alter it or raise it is just a mere suggestion. We'll meet the ordinance, not a problem.
That's what I
If we were
needed
going
you
to
to,
ask for what's the word I'm looking for? For a consideration, it would be to Joe's point, negate or defer the 4-to-1 ratio so that we didn't have to ask to either raise the height or that we didn't meet a certain foot candle per,
got it.
Right,
But I
yeah.
think that in this, if that were the case,
Yeah.
that would have to go to the ZBA.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think we can do it.
The uniformity ratio needs to go to the ZBA, Joe?
Just looking to see if there's any.
And then, Joe, did you ever check the way that the ordinance was written for
The 20 is for everything. It doesn't matter.
wall mounted, like building mounted, or?
That's a
okay.
20-foot limit on all non-residential lighting fixtures.
That's from the ground.
It's
That's
measured from grade, yeah.
And I've already talked to the owners about this because this came back and I noticed that we had 0.02 foot candles and I said, it's going to be dark back there. Worst case scenario, like I said, we can put 2 pole lights in the center, which would be in between the piers of the overhead doors. So when the trucks came around, we could make it work. We would prefer to have consensus on the ratio without having to go to ZBA. If you guys could think about that, it would make everybody's life easier, but no matter what, we'll meet your ordinance for light.
So from your perspective, you would be good if the ratio was not a factor. You don't mind that those spots are.
It kind of needs to be 1-to-1 with the way it's written now, or the way that my lighting distributor set up the photometric plan. So right now I have like 4.2 on the perimeter at curb. 4-to-1 means I would have to have 1 foot candle at least in the center, or I can't dip below 1 foot candle.
But as far as the what's currently represented on the plan, that's cool with the prospective owners. They're fine with that dark area in the middle. It's not bothersome to them.
I mean, they're not going to be accepting trucks at night. They're going to be closed down, for the most part at night. So there's really no need for them to have 1 foot candle throughout that whole parking lot.
So what I would say is that if you're interested in making a motion to approve tonight with conditions, your lighting condition would be something to the effect of, the plan shall meet the Bruce Township lighting ordinance, and they're either going to be able to figure out a way to meet it, or they're going to get a variance from one of the standards. Either way, they will be in compliance with our ordinance because a variance would bring them into compliance. So
Could we word it like, and this is presumptuous, but approved based on or contingent upon all lighting being met by height ordinances, but lighting ratio would not need to be something to that
yeah,
effect?
you're looking for the height and cutoff standards to be met no matter what, but
So are you now saying that the uniformity ratio, he's saying that's the most important thing?
No, that's the,
he's saying that's
he
the
doesn't care
least
about the
important thing.
uniformity.
He's saying that if he was going to try to get a variance for anything, it would be for the uniformity ratio.
Because he doesn't need that much light in the center of that open space.
Yeah.
by code and by your ordinance, I can't build it the way it's drawn. I also can't build to your ordinance with the 4-to-1 ratio without adding lights in the center of the parking lot, which would inhibit the drive lanes, which I know you guys don't care about, but my owners do, or asking to raise the height, which none of you want to do. So again, if you guys are open to it, I'm okay with keeping them all downlights, keeping the height at 20, and just requesting that you guys don't enforce the 4-to-1 ratio on the approval. That's it.
And Joe,
And I think everybody will be happy with that.
Yeah.
we have something in our zoning ordinance, and he's requesting, legitimate request, that we not pay any attention to one of the components.
Just reading, see.
Just out of curiosity, I don't. Does anybody know why it's a 4-to-1 ratio?
It's probably the most common ratio you see in ordinances.
But wouldn't that typically be for like areas that you'd have either foot traffic or?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
Typically, you're looking at parking lots. Our ordinance is kind of general about it. Non-residential parking lots require in the non-residential store areas, yards and sales areas, so it kind of covers everything. This would be a yard of a sort.
So the motion could state, I'm trying to think here, that
You're looking for compliance with height and cutoff standards, but it's contingent on finding some way to compliance with the uniformity ratio, which is going to be a variance or some reconfiguration of the lighting.
okay, so we don't say how, we just say,
Exactly, you don't have to say how.
basically, it's the responsibility of the ZBA to
Yeah,
figure it out.
we figure, and if they can figure it out without going there, fine, that's cool.
Okay, all right. Sounds good to me. And then how do we deal with the with the facade, the full brick requirement on the front?
You simply say that you feel, in the opinion of the planning commission, the facade as presented is compliant with the ordinance.
Okay.
All right, I think we've wrapped up discussion. Is anybody feeling a motion?
Probably
Going to be a collaborative
Yeah.
effort, but go ahead and start if
I'll
you
take
feel comfortable.
a crack at it, but
All right.
I'm going to need help. Okay. I will make a motion to approve the preliminary site plan for the Space Park Industrial Building on 6.24 acres. And that will involve parcels 2, 3, and 4, which will become parcels 2A and 2B.
2,
And then
comma A and E.
2, comma A and
Yes.
B.
Yep.
Thank you.
If it,
And that will be located on Bruce Tech Park Drive. This approval is contingent on the ZBA approval of the height variance for the building, and that there be a completion of the property transfers to create the new parcel. In addition, the following stipulations are noted and as may be addressed when a revised site plan is submitted. These are premised on the review letters by the township's planner and engineer. And the final site plan, or the final review of the site plan must also comply with all other ordinance and engineering requirements. In terms of the specifics, the facade of the building as presented is found to be compliant with our ordinance. Secondly, that the parking, the final parking spaces that are provided will be compliant with our ordinance. that the applicant has agreed to add one street tree. That, and this is where I'm going to need help, that the lighting plan will be compliant with our ordinance, and that any adjustments that are needed would require a variance that would be heard by our zoning board of appeals,
Unless an ordinance compliant solution can be found.
unless an ordinance compliant solution can be found. The last item would be that all of the other plant updates identified in the planner's memo and in the engineer's memo will be cared for and will be included in a final site plan. I don't know what else I missed.
I think it was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah,
Good job.
Yeah, that was pretty
We
good.
get the building height? That was
We don't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, I said,
Yeah, she said that she's
yeah.
ZBA approval.
Yeah.
Just to cover ourselves, and so I don't have to produce another petition to the ZBA, can we word the lighting that owner or whoever will design exterior lighting to meet all Bruce Township exterior lighting ordinances with the exception of the 4-to-1 ratio?
No, I'm not
I
going
don't
to
think
do
the
that.
planning commission, I don't think the planning commission
No, I'm
actually
not
can
gonna
do
do
that the
that.
way the ordinance is written.
That's not in my motion.
Okay. All right. It's fine.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Boyce. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hegelstein. Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Cant,
Yes.
Boyce,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
D. Vincent,
Yes.
J. Vincent,
Yes.
Blaylock,
Yes.
Higgleston.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Quick question, should we think about trying to amend our ZBA to include the 4-to-1 for Monday's meeting?
Is there
Not saying we're gonna use it.
a timeframe requirement for that?
I don't,
That'd be my only question.
Yeah, it's not in the notice, that's the only problem. That,
Well,
it's
you know
probably a
what,
Chris
we'll
question.
show 2 pole lights in the center of the lot, and then if the owners are adamant about it, we can apply for a new petition to the ZBA.
I think that's fine.
Good?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how we'll handle it. Thank you very much. You guys have a good night.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna read the minutes for a second.
All right, we're going to take a 3-minute break, 5-minute break. So, do we have to vote on that?
Nah, it's your.
Okay, so
your
we're
call.
breaking at 7:42. We'll be back in 5 minutes. right there, I don't believe there are any, other than what we have below, so we'll move on to item 10. 10A is the master plan discussion around our survey.
I think it's sort of an update, really, just to, on the timeline, right?
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody's aware, because we sent out some communications, the Township website, the new website was not going to be available in time for the May 1st mailing. Certainly, we could have done that. The board approved an amount up to $3,000 to conduct, to do the mailing if we needed to do that. So things kind of just slowed down, I guess. At this point, the township website, the new website is still not available. Dana, will that be by the end of the month, or you don't know?
I honestly don't know, but I would really think so. By the end
Okay.
of this month, yeah.
So it's certainly, it's not Dana's office, it's the clerk's office that really manages all of that aspect of the township business. So they are working with, get the name of the company.
Civic Plus.
Civic Plus, yes. So hopefully it will be ready. Now, my understanding is the survey is actually hosted by you, and we're just linked to your site.
Exactly.
So I guess there's not a reason we couldn't do that. If they don't make it, there's probably not a reason we couldn't do that with the website we have. I mean, creating a link is not that difficult.
Yeah.
So
And the QR code that we provided goes straight to
Okay.
the project page where the survey link is, so.
So I had a conversation with Treasurer DeGiorgio just yesterday. The township is sending, if I remember the dates correctly, their July mail out, it's actually June, to the printer, I believe on the 14th or 19th of June. He thought it would be ready to go out 5 days after that, and we could include something in that envelope for just a very minimal charge. It would probably just be in a couple of $100s. Now, we've already been approved for up to $3,000, but I don't think we'll need that. So it seems like that would be the best.
Everybody would get it.
Yeah.
That would be probably the best way to reach a full audience, yeah.
And my suggestion to both him and we were having this discussion before, is to have it be something separate that is in the envelope.
Yes.
Not included in the newsletter. We would like it to stand out.
Right.
The other thought that came to my mind is, and I was going to ask Frank about this, is if we could have something printed on the outside of the envelope, just something in bold, master plan survey enclosed.
Sure, yeah.
Good idea.
So that
That's a
would,
great idea.
I don't think it would be that difficult to have an envelope custom printed. We have the money, we have up to $3,000. So just to draw
That's a
more
good
attention
idea.
to it.
That's
Yeah.
a good idea.
I think that's great.
From kind of the paperwork part of it, Mandy and Dana and I are meeting tomorrow morning. We've got a couple good drafts of 3 things. For lack of better words, what would be the banner announcement on the new website? And if we had to, we could use something like that on the old website. So that was one thing. We're working on what would be the announcement, or the public notice, for lack of better words, in the newspaper. And I think our original communication plan that the board approved back in April said we would maybe do 2 of them. So,
That was included.
yes. And the price is pretty nominal in terms of, the outlay that was approved. And then we were going to work on what we're calling a flyer, the thing that would go in the envelope, which you were talking about.
Yes.
And so we're working on that, and now actually we have a due date, June 14th.
Yeah, coming up fast.
Because Frank's going to want to turn everything over, I'm assuming, together to the
Yeah.
printer.
Correct.
So it would go out, if I'm thinking, you said mailing 5 days later.
The printer would be done in 5 days. It would go out after that.
Okay, do we know when after that is?
I believe very soon or
Okay.
immediately. He thought it would be in people's homes by the end of June, or at the very latest, the very 1st of July.
Okay, so, as we're doing this little work tomorrow, am I correct that the survey window, which we wanted to be for 4 weeks, would be July 1st through July 31st?
Yes, yeah, we would keep it open
Okay.
through the month of July, basically.
Okay, so people get the notice and it'll say July 1st. Lead them to, either we'll give them the link in the survey or they can go get it from the township website.
Yeah.
And then if for some reason the township website is not, the new one isn't up by July 1st, are we saying, Philbrook and I were speaking some time ago about this, and I said, well, can't we just put it on the old website? And he said, yeah, you could, but he was a little concerned that somehow things would fall apart when it transitioned.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's not, that QR code I provided and the link that I provided, that goes straight to where the survey is. So it doesn't really matter what's happening with the township
Okay.
website. You can use the township website to direct people there, but what people get in their envelope, if you put that QR code and that URL on there, they're gonna be able to just go straight to it. And if the township website's in flux, they'll be
Oh, okay.
bypassing it anyway.
All right, that's,
So we're good.
good enough,
And then
yeah.
okay.
you will know from your skiffle standpoint that on July 1st, that thing needs to be accessible.
Yes, we
Not
can-
before.
Yeah, we'll make it accessible. I'll make a note of the mailing date, which we were just talking about, and I will have it ready to be made accessible.
I guess I just have a comment on that. Like, I don't know what the reason for the strictness of exactly 4 weeks would be. My fear is if they get this envelope and open it June 29th, and they click on the thing, and it's not
Oh,
working.
it'll be open when the thing gets mailed.
Okay.
There's,
I don't want it to be where like it goes out a day or two early, they try to do it, it's not available, they set it down, they forget, they never go back to it.
no,
So-
no, we'll have it open before that. We're not gonna open it on the 1st or something. Yeah, we'll.
Okay.
We will have it
Okay.
open before that.
I would just describe it as like available through July 31st or something, so
Okay.
that it's
No, we
not.
just close it on July 1st.
Yeah.
That's better.
Yeah.
And then, are you, David, going to talk to Frank about the idea about the little master plan
Yes,
survey
yep.
notice?
I will do that.
Okay. Well, we're moving forward, that's good. Looks like by the time we meet again, we should have the survey out. So, anything else on the master plan discussion for this evening?
No.
Okay. 10B is an update on the agribusiness and agritourism. Is there any update from our committee?
Nope.
Okay. 10C is the 5G discussion.
Yeah, we have no updates.
Okay. Item 11 is new business. I don't believe that we have any. Item 12, comments from committees or consultants. We heard from the Agritourism Update Committee. I don't think there's anything else.
Are we going to talk about lighting?
Oh, yes, I think from the comments earlier, there was a question about the lighting. And did you have an update, Joe? Was it?
Of sorts, yeah. I haven't had a chance to develop any, like, language or anything, or like a memo with suggestions, but what I will note is that I went through the exterior lighting requirements. As we were discussing today, we don't have any built-in waivers. I have a recent ordinance that I worked on that actually does have a waiver standard. That was for East Bay Township, which, if you're not familiar, is just outside of Traverse City. That also has some other things. It actually has a Kelvin limit in that ordinance. This is an ordinance that was adopted think it was November. So we were working on it for a little while, but this is one of the more recent sets of lighting standards I've worked on.
Comprehensive.
So I think we can use some of what's in there as a basis for discussion. There's also some other aspects of that ordinance that I think are good. You know, kind of every time you do something, you kind of think of a slightly better way to do it. So it has a somewhat more comprehensive intent statement. It has a more clear applicability section as well. So basically it talks about, okay, if you got a site that has lighting and you're replacing some of it, do you have to replace all of it? It kind of gives you a scale of, here's when you have to replace all the lighting on the site. Here's when you can just replace a portion. So I think that's something that we would look at incorporating as well. Some sort of very clear, when do you have to do what with your lighting when you're working on a site. So those are a few things that just right off the bat, I thought, well, okay, we could work on incorporating this into the Bruce ordinance as well.
You're speaking of the Traverse City one?
Yeah, this is the one outside Traverse
So
City.
that's already published, right?
Yes, yeah.
Is that just the city of Traverse City?
No, it's East Bay Township.
East Bay?
Yeah, yep.
So we can find it pretty easy, or,
Oh, yeah, it's on their website.
okay. So anybody wants to look at East Bay Township lighting ordinance? Joe, I had a couple of comments here, and they're probably already addressed in that Traverse City ordinance, hopefully, but what we do, I would request that it apply to building-mounted monument lights, which are typically, entrance ways to development, or pole lights, and that all fixtures must be dark sky approved and no floodlights. And I've been in conversation with Washington Township recently, and they've gotten on board. They assured me that all their new developments are going to be dark sky org approved. So really thankful for that. So anyway, and you're already working on it, so we don't need a motion to take and formalize any of this stuff, right? I mean, are we in agreement that, is there any objection to asking Joe to take and come up with, it would be a memo, is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, I would start with a memo with some suggested
Okay.
discussion items, and then,
Okay, does anybody have any exception with him proceeding forward with that? Okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Okay. That wraps up 12, so 13 is comments from commissioners. I did mention briefly during the break, just at the ZBA meeting this week, we did hear the request for variance from the Space Park development that we heard from tonight. During that discussion, there was talk of, just aerospace and space-related businesses and development becoming more prevalent in the Southeast Michigan area, and with that coming larger requirements for facilities that can handle the size of components that these planes and rockets and things like that kind of require. So I think from the ZBA perspective, they were looking at if this is something the township is interested in attracting here, that requiring every one of them to go through the ZBA is a painful way to do that. So it's something that we can potentially, if we would like to, consider investigating further. I will just, if you want, I will reiterate what you, or I can recap what you shared, if you want to. Commissioner Barnett did suggest that we kind of take a wait and see approach. We've had one, but let's not make a knee-jerk reaction and go update a recently updated standard right now and see if that's something that becomes more of an ongoing issue. So
would this be something, it's called Space Park? I mean, is that specific to aerospace? That we're trying to draw that into that specific area, that you could change the height in that park for the buildings that are built in that area?
The Space Park is the business itself.
Oh, okay.
One thing you could look at if you did go higher would be some sort of, if you do have neighboring residential or something, maybe there's a distance from the neighboring residential where the additional height is, not permitted or something like that. But, 50 feet is what I see in a lot of ordinances now, and that's, a lot of those have changed in the last year or two,
They have recently
Actually,
changed.
the East Bay ordinance that I was just looking at, I looked at it before I closed it, it was 50 feet.
Okay.
And I know Farmington Hills is too, because I was just looking at an industrial site plan for them the other day. 50 feet is becoming pretty common for industrial.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to lose out opportunities to draw that into our community. If they're just looking at what your ordinances are, and Armada allows 50 and we only allow 40, they could just go to Armada and
Right.
not have to jump through any hoops to get what they need.
Yeah, and that's I think that was the comments during the ZBA meeting. I think that's something that, we are looking to, there's been a lot of work done in that industrial area, the industrial corridor, and I know there's been interest in desiring business, attracting businesses over there, so something to us to consider in the future if we feel that that's going to be important for us to attract those, so. Anything else? Any comments from other commissioners?
Yeah, I have one thing.
Okay.
And it was to clarify a comment made during public comments about the timing of the master plan review. Just to make it clear, the master plan was last reaffirmed in 2021, not 2022 as stated. And that it will be up for a general review. A 5-year review is required by state statute, or strongly suggested in 2026. So it was last summer when I was holding the trustee seat for the couple of months, and the same subject came up about the decision to reopen for purposes of looking at commercial and industrial. And I had made the point is that, let me read what I said actually. The 5-year review is required under the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, but communities are also encouraged to review their master plan more frequently regarding aspects or areas that have changed over time or where development is or may become active. In other words, being proactive rather than reactive. And certainly, as I mentioned at that meeting, this does not mean that, there's an intent to make any whole-scale changes with regard to our commercial and industrial. But it's been quite some time, even though we have 5-year reviews, there hasn't been a deep dive on that particular aspect for probably over a decade. So just clarifying. And we'll see, we're actually getting the same kind of public input that they've got in the past by having town halls, by having surveys, so we're doing that.
Yep, I agree. Thank you. All right, with that, I make a motion to adjourn at 8:05 PM. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gant. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's a wrap. Thank you, everybody.
Everything.